Who's pressing this SOS button on their Garmin InReach? Why are they pressing it? And more importantly, what can we learn from that data? Today, I'm going to be going over some of that data and sharing my analysis of the Garmin InReach SOS Year in Review. They just released their 2023 report. It's got a lot of good data in it. I'm a data nerd, so I love diving into this kind of stuff. I'll share some of the key highlights of the data and share some of the takeaways that I gleaned from it that might just save your life. So listen up and let's dive in.
Hooray!
Hey y'all, my name is Adam and this is Dad Camps, where I talk about getting outside with my kids and all the gear that goes with it. If you're into that too, then please hang out and subscribe. All right, today I'm going to break down the who, what, where, how of the data that Garmin provided. And I'll give you something that you can take away from each one. And stick around to the end for a Garmin InReach tip that you may not be aware of and could end up saving your life. I'll also share some info on what pushing the SOS button might cost you. All right, so first up, where are people pushing the SOS button from? Every year, SOS incidents are triggered literally from all around the world, from every continent, excluding Australia, excluding Antarctica. Definitely some from Australia. I think everything there is trying to kill you. Responses varied wildly from local police and ambulance responses out on major highways and interstates to literally highly technical helicopter rescues on Mount Everest and even out in the middle of the ocean, which is terrifying. So if you take a look at the map of where the incidents were triggered from, you know, it makes sense that there'd be a heavy density of calls around the Western US, but I was surprised by how there were calls spread out across the globe. I also found it interesting that there was seemingly high amount in New Zealand, which I'm postulating that is just because it's an extremely rugged place that draws adventurers. I don't know, but seems like a lot for a small country. So my takeaway from this is that Garmin is available everywhere. Garmin uses the Iridium satellite network, which is one of the, if not the most reliable, most amount of coverage provided in a satellite network. So I think the thing to consider here is think about bringing your Garmin InReach with you when you're traveling internationally. Even if it's just, you know, you're going to be traveling to London. If you get into trouble, this can still help you out, even if you are traveling somewhere to a high density population. All right, next let's talk about the what. What activity were people involved in when they triggered their Garmin InReach SOS? So if you take a look at this pie chart here, you can see that approximately a third were hiking and backpacking, which seemed lower to me than expected. I thought that would be like the bulk. That's kind of what I think of as what the users of a Garmin InReach would be doing. But they list about 20 other activities of what people were engaged in when they triggered it. And what stuck out to me was that almost as much as hiking was driving, motorcycling, and boating related. That made up about another maybe 25%. My takeaway from that data point is carry this thing with you in your car or your boat or whatever vehicle you're traveling in. Personally, I never think about bringing it with me unless I'm out going for a hike or I'm planning to go out into the wilderness where there's no cell coverage. You know, I live in Oregon and there's often times when we're driving around and there's no cell coverage when you're driving through national forest land or things like that. And you know, if you're paying for the subscription already, doesn't hurt you at all to just throw this thing in, just turn the battery off, and have it charged up, throw it in your glove box, and that way you always have it in case something comes up. Also, you might not need it for yourself, but you could encounter a situation where you do need it. So let's talk about the who. Who are the people who are triggering SOS incidents? So if you look at this pie chart, you can see approximately 50% of the SOS calls were for the individual making the call itself. And looks like about 80% was for the individual and or their party. But the interesting part to me is that 20% of the SOS calls were for a third party. And this is something that I don't think about too much, is needing it for somebody else. So here's what I want you to take away from this one. I want you to think about hitting that like button, if you don't mind. That would be awesome. Help more people see this video. If you're liking it, give me a thumbs up. But my real takeaway on this is taking it with me when I go on trail runs or day hikes. Not something I typically would do, is bring it with me on somewhere where I feel confident in my ability to get myself out of the situation, right? It's usually when I'm going on very long hikes or overnight hikes when I would typically bring the Garmin InReach with me. But Even if you're just going out for a trail run or a day hike, there's still a chance that you might need it, and there is a chance that you might encounter somebody who also needs assistance. And it could be somebody who needs rescue immediately, and pressing the SOS button could help that person out. All right, so next let's talk about the why. Why were people triggering an SOS in 2023? Well, if you look at this pie chart, you can see that the report states that responses were made for plane crashes, grizzly bear encounters, sinking sailboats, skiers and avalanches, stranded divers, injured climbers, many more. Injuries are being lost, seems obvious to me, but about 25% was for a vehicle accident or a breakdown. So here's the key takeaway for me for this. It's not just for search and rescue. So often I think about the Garmin InReach as being a search and rescue device if you're in the wilderness and you're gonna need a search and rescue crew or a helicopter to come evacuate you out in a medical emergency or something like that. But they can also dispatch police cars, fire trucks, an ambulance, and any kind of emergency responder can be dispatched through an SOS incident being triggered. They could even dispatch a tow truck. If your car breaks down and you're out of cell service, they could dispatch a tow truck to you to tow your car and get you out of there that way. Which leads me to the next data point is, how did responses occur and what was dispatched in that response? So when you take a look at this graph, the highest response dispatched was a helicopter, which is maybe what you would expect. But look at how many other ways help may arrive. Like I said, a tow truck or a boat or a fire truck. Here's the takeaway on this one. A significant portion of the incident were resolved with self-rescue. And here's the big tip I mentioned earlier that you may not be aware of. You can use your device and the app connected to it to chat with an emergency incident responder. And you can do this just to be able to ask them questions or maybe help you diagnose a potential medical issue. And there's no charge for chatting with an incident responder. It even says on the Garmin subscription, unlimited SOS. I've heard that search and rescue, first responders, they want you to reach out for help as soon as you think you need it, so don't wait. If you think that you're having a medical emergency or a potential one, go ahead and hit it, and there's not going to be any repercussions for you on that. You can chat with an emergency responder and find out if it is an actual emergency and you do need help or not. It could be a huge help to you to know if you should try to press on or if it's better for you to hunker down and wait for rescue. Or they potentially could even help you learn how to get to safety. Say if you were lost in the wilderness, then they may be able to direct you in the right direction by looking at where your location is. So what does it cost if you actually do have to get rescued? If you push the button and you actually do end up needing to be rescued or to have a response sent to you, what would that cost? What's the risk that we're talking about here? And typically, there is no charge for rescue. Search and rescue individuals are typically volunteers, so there's not a cost associated with search and rescue being dispatched for a rescue situation. But there could be a charge associated with a specific equipment usage or something like that. If they had to dispatch a helicopter or a boat, cost for that could be passed on to you, and that could vary wildly, anywhere from a few $100s to $10,000, depending on the technical needs of the rescue. And if there's an ambulance ride or something like that associated with the rescue, then those would typically then be handled by your insurance, just as it would be as if you had called 911. And speaking of insurance, another tip you may not be aware of is that you can buy search and rescue insurance through Garmin for, I think it's currently $40 per year, and that gets you up to $100,000 of search and rescue insurance. If you're consistently going on adventures that are out of cell service, then it might be worth considering. $40 a year, a few bucks a month to have the peace of mind to know that you're not going to be charged anything outrageous if you press that button. It's a lot of peace of mind. All right, well, thanks for taking the time to watch. If you've made it this far, would you consider subscribing? I'm trying to grow this channel and get to 1,000 subscribers so I can get monetized and be able to support the channel and continue to make videos like this. So I'd love to have you join me. Come along for the ride. Thanks, and I asked YouTube to come up with a video to queue up specifically for you, and this is the one that they came up with, so check that out.